Thank you for your prayers. Last week when we gathered, I showed you the clip from This Is Us of Randall and Kevin having a fist fight with each other with a crowd that gathered around them and saw them fighting. And it was a fight over what had built up over many years in their relationship with one another, growing up together. And finally, it hit the fan, and they let out all their emotions in front of other people. When we gathered last week, we also saw the break in the relationship between Jesus and Peter. That Peter, who was raised up to be rock on which Jesus would build his church, and then Peter becomes an obstacle to Jesus. He doesn't want the Father's will to be done. He doesn't want Jesus to do God's will, and got in the way. And it was a break in their relationship. And we talked about how we sometimes become obstacles in our relationship with one another, and how we get in the way of people doing God's will, or we want everyone to do what we think is right for them, and how relationships, we need to give people space. Today we gather, and as we gather, we hear Jesus taking it further about broken relationships. And he speaks about 4 ways that we are to address those broken relationships. He says the first way is when your brother or sister has wronged you, go to them. Just the 2 of you. Not in public, not in front of a crowd of people who start taking photographs, as we saw Randall and Kevin doing, but go to your brother and sister and sit down and talk with them and hear each other out. Listen to what's going on. And how many times have we just turned our back on somebody we love? Whether, and it's not just about a brother or sister relative, but members of our neighborhoods, people that we journey with in life, people we work with, and we've decided to push them off and into the background, and we write them off, and we don't talk with them anymore. And a lot of time goes by, and finally we forget even why we stopped talking. We don't know what was wrong, and we don't remember, but they're on our list, and we're not going to patch that relationship. How important it is for us not to let things build up like Randall and Kevin did in their relationship as siblings growing up, but to really, now that they were adults, able to do it. But now we know we're all grown up, and we need to look at the broken relationships that we have. And it's a challenge to sit with someone whom we've been arguing with or stop talking to and try to mend the relationship. And sometimes we don't think we're going to get a hearing, but oftentimes, more often than not, the relationship heals right at that level when one of us takes the risk. And if that doesn't work, Jesus says the second thing we can do is to go to that person with a couple of other people to listen and to speak. Now, these are supposed to be 2 impartial people, okay? You're having trouble with your sister-in-law. You don't bring your mother and your husband and try to talk some sense into them, okay? It's finding people that will hear you both out and bring wisdom to the situation so that there's a healing that takes place. And when there are more than just the 2 of you, what needs to happen is a little listening on both parts. Listen to the people that you brought, that maybe you who thought that you were right might have made a mistake and need to hear that from somebody else. And so it's trying to heal it on the smallest level. The principle of subsidiarity. Don't make a big scene out of it. And then finally, if that hearing with one or two other people doesn't work, Jesus says, take it to the church, the community, the people that you're on the journey of faith with, and to see if that can be worked out so that that healing is brought to that situation, so that you're not broken in the relationship. And the reason we take it to the church, the community, is because one broken relationship affects us all. Have you ever noticed how two people might not be getting along and the word spreads? You didn't talk to the person about it, but you gossiped about the person. And it got people taking sides and people destroying somebody else's reputation and making them feel uncomfortable and you feeling uncomfortable. And it impacts the whole community. You know what that's like. You've experienced it here in our town. You know what it's like when somebody is having an argument with somebody else and they don't heal it on their own level. And then the fourth thing Jesus says is, if they don't listen to the community, treat them as you would a tax collector or a sinner. Now we can say, we ostracize them. Treat them like a tax collector and sinner. Push them aside, push them out. But then we need to look in the gospel to see that Jesus ate with tax collectors and sinners. Jesus welcomed tax collectors and sinners. Jesus continued to invite them into the circle, trying to heal over and over again the broken relationships. So I'm going to ask you to think about the relationships that you have in your own life. And Jesus uses the word brother, sister, but what about relationships with other people? How that breaks the heart, our own heart, and how it breaks the heart of the other person. I walk all the time in my neighborhood, and there's one older couple, they're in their late 50s, early 60s. And their marriage broke. And one of their daughters was coming by to visit her mother. And I don't know what happened, but she came to the house and rang the doorbell, and then she opened the screen door and started banging on the door and said, "Come on, Ma, please let me talk with you. Please let me in. Don't lock the door and close the door on me. Let me come in and talk with you." Nothing happened. She closed the door and walked away in tears. I met her at the end of the driveway with Maggie, my dog. And I said, "Sue, what's happened?" And she said, "Oh, long story. And I can't get in to talk with my mother. She's locked us all out." And I said, "Don't give up. Don't give up. You know, your mother goes to work at 6:15. She has to open the door." Oh, I could do that. The next day I went by, and at 6:15, there the two of them were talking. It's a start. Will it heal the whole situation? It's a start, because relationships are important. Amen.